I'm super excited to be here, not just because it's my first time in Amsterdam, but because I get to share all the product announcements with you and the transformation that we've been on at Puppet. Who here is excited about new product announcements? Yeah. Woo! Right. So Puppet is synonymous with configuration management. However, as a company, Puppet has expanded from configuration management to beyond. And we're here to partner with all of you as you expand your automation from infrastructure to application delivery. In today's session, I really want you to take a step back and recognize the fact that you have a stake in both application delivery and infrastructure automation. Listen, watch, and really internalize the product announcements through the lens of how they'll help enable you. And I'm going to share them through the lens of how they've helped enable us at Puppet through our own transformation. Last year, we had one product line, Puppet Enterprise. Now we have three, Puppet Enterprise, Puppet Discovery, and Puppet Pipelines. Last year, we shipped software twice a year. Now we ship software twice a month. And for us to have made that transition, we had to progress on our own DevOps transformation, just like all of you. As I talk to customers like yourselves and others across the globe, I really hear four sets of challenges consistently. The first one is, how do I accelerate my time to automation? How do I automate more things in my environment? The second is, how do I scale my automation? How do I go from individuals to teams to entire organizations? How do I go from a small number of nodes to my entire estate? Third, how do I transform? With the advent of cloud native and containerized application architectures, it means that the practices and tools are shifting, and that changes our world together here. And the fourth is, how do I measure the impact of my DevOps transformation? How do I know if I'm delivering the velocity, the quality that my business is expecting of me, and the return on investment for that? So we're going to talk about, obviously, in the context of our new products, how we help solve these four sets of challenges. Last year, we introduced Puppet Bolt, our open source task runner. And Bolt gives you a very simple way to get started with automation. You can take a set of scripts, you can turn them into a task. You can take those tasks and you can add metadata around them and publish them on the Puppet Forge. And from there, you can create a task plan that lets you create more complex orchestration like application deployment. From there, we've better integrated tasks into Puppet Enterprise. So now you have the ability to execute tasks as well as view task plans with all the role-based access control, the compliance, the reporting, and so forth that you get out of Puppet Enterprise. But it's not sufficient to just end there, right? This is all about infrastructure as code. We know that well. And we have to treat our infrastructure code the same way we do our application code. That is, put it into a pipeline. And that's why we created continuous delivery for Puppet Enterprise, or CD for PE, as we call it. It gives you the tooling to be able to do a build, test, and deploy cycle for your Puppet code. It's the combination of these three things that lets you get started very quickly with automation, but then scale it across your environment and across your teams. Now let's switch gears and talk about what's new. First up is Bolt. Last year, we introduced Bolt 0.1, and over 40 releases later, I'm really excited to share with you that Bolt has turned 1.0. Woohoo! In Bolt 1.0, we've added the ability to add an apply statement to your task plan. So now you can pull in all of the Puppet ecosystem of code that exists out on the Forge. That's super powerful. We've also improved the way that we handle cross-platform tasks. So now the execution of those, depending on various operating systems, is better aligned to your environment. And third, we've created an inventory file. So now you have a simple way to put the nodes and node groups, along with their associated credentials, into a single file that lets you get started really, really fast. Bolt 1.0 is available to all of you today. So I encourage you to go give it a try. Next up, Puppet 6. This is the latest version of our open source platform. And with Puppet 6, we've now better integrated secrets management for the agents themselves directly into secret stores like Conjure from CyberArk and Vault from HashiCorp. We've also containerized the Puppet server stack. So now through a Docker Compose file, you've got a really easy way to get up and running with your Puppet server infrastructure. And we've simplified certificate management by integrating in with your certificate authority like Active Directory. And like Bolt 1.0, Puppet 6 is available to all of you today, and I encourage you to go give it a spin. Of course, we have updates to Puppet Enterprise as well. PE 2019, our latest release, now includes Puppet 6, but it also includes taskless or task-based execution. So now you can do execution on remote hosts via SSH or WinRM. As part of that, you have the ability to actually install a PE agent remotely, which is excellent. Again, simplifying the experience for all of you. And we've created a task scheduler. So now you have the ability to pick a particular day and time at which point you want your tasks to execute. That better fits within your window, your operating windows that you have. So enough of me talking about all these things. Let's see them in action. I'd like to invite up onto stage Lucy Wyman, one of our Bolt engineers, to show you Bolt 1.0. Lucy?
Thanks, Matt. As Matt said, my name is Lucy Wyman, and I'm an engineer on the Bolt team. So last year, we introduced Bolt as a way to easily get started automating your infrastructure using the tools you already know and have at your disposal. The scripts that you already have automating parts of your infrastructure. SSH, WinRM. You don't need to install anything super special, no agents. Bolt is really easy to get started with. In the last year, we wanted to add the ability to leverage all of the content that we have on the Forge and enable you to use Puppet code along with Bolt in Bolt plans. So we've introduced the apply statement as the way to do that. So let's see it in action. I have a control repo here. And control repo is the canonical way that we distribute Puppet code, store Puppet modules. So I've got my manifests here, my hire data, my Puppet file, all the typical Puppet infrastructure that I need. And you'll notice that there's also this directory called a bolster. So if we look at that, this is where I can store local configuration for Bolt that's specific to the project. So I can have specific Bolt configurations for my project here in bolt.yaml. And I've also got something called an inventory file. So an inventory file is where you can store information about your nodes and configuration for those nodes so you don't have to type in your password every time you run Bolt, essentially. I've got an example down here, and you can see that in the inventory file, you can have groups of nodes, subgroups, and then you can have configuration specific to those groups. And it's all the things you can configure about nodes when you're running Bolt anyway. The ports they run on, the transports they use, your SSH key, etc. So using this inventory file, I'm going to be working with my WebEL group. And the very first thing that I'm going to do is run an IP tables command. So for this demo, I'm going to be adding a new rule to my firewall rules that will open an ingress on port 443. So I'm going to kind of go back to Bolt's roots and just use Bolt command run. This is actually the most common command that Bolt users use, is just the plain command. And all it does is run a command on the nodes that I specify. And what I'm looking for here is seeing that port 443 is not currently part of my rule set for my firewall. And I can see from the output that it's not. So I'm going to make some modifications to my Puppet code in order to add that ingress. So I can see that I've already done this. I have added a Windows firewall rule as well as the Linux one to open up port 443. And usually I would have to test this by pushing it to Git, deploying it to some part of my infrastructure, running the Puppet agent, seeing what resources changed, etc. But with the new apply command, instead, I can just include my Puppet code that I'm developing in a Bolt plan, run that plan on some nodes, and see if the changes are what I expect. It's a much faster feedback loop for testing Puppet code and doesn't involve having to push to Git and merge pull requests, all of that. So taking a look at the plan that I have, it's living in the same module as the code that I'm writing, so that profile firewall module. I've got one parameter, which is whether I want to ensure that the class is actually present. And then I've got this apply prep function, and that's going to be run on a node group called demo nodes. And so, as the name suggests, the apply prep function just prepares the nodes to have Puppet apply be run on them. And then I've got my apply statement running on the same group. And then this is a block of Puppet code that gets passed to the apply statement. So I've got my firewall class, I ensure it's there. And then I want to run that same IP tables command that I just ran and make sure that HTTPS is there this time. So let's run the plan. And just like that, this actually would take like 60 seconds to run, but in no time at all, I can see that HTTPS has in fact been added to my firewall rules. So yeah, again, with the power of Bolt and the apply function in it, really shortened that feedback loop and allowed me to develop my Puppet code that much faster. So now I'm going to commit and push my changes to my Git repo. And while I'm really confident that this Puppet code is now doing what I expect it to, what I really want to know is how these changes are going to infect my entire infrastructure. Like, I wish that I had a way to know what nodes would be changed and what resources would be impacted.
I think I may have something that can help you with that, Lucy. So coincidentally enough, we have the latest version of continuous delivery for Puppet Enterprise, CD4PE 2.0. And we've created a feature exactly for what Lucy needs, which we call impact analysis. Impact analysis allows you to see visually the nodes, resources, and classes that will get impacted by a particular Puppet code change. And the beauty of this is that it happens before you ever merge any code or you deploy it out into your Puppet server infrastructure. We've also added some pre-installed test jobs. So now right out of the box, you'll be able to set up a pipeline for your Puppet code, including test jobs like PDK and onceover and linter and so forth. We've also simplified the hardware requirements to run your tests. Previously, you had to provision your own hardware. Now we've done that through a set of Docker-based images. So Lucy, why don't we continue on the firewall rules changes and see how impact analysis works?
Let's do it. All right, so I've got those same changes that I just pushed to my branch on GitHub, and I'm going to open a pull request against the master. And I've already set up my CD4PE instance to be connected to my control repo. So there's a webhook that will trigger CD4PE to run some continuous integration tasks that I have set up. So if we take a look at this pull request, I can see that it's already kicked off the impact analysis and continuous integration suites that I've configured. So if I go back to CD4PE, I can see something's happened. And on the right-hand side here, I've got all of the validation checks that I have running as part of my CI. So there's a control repo validation, a onceover spec, and a HIRA syntax validation. And then I've also over here got my impact analysis, which is going to tell me how my Puppet code changes are going to impact my infrastructure. So clicking into that, I can see what nodes are going to be affected. And in this case, there's only 4 of them. And those are the 4 demo nodes that I had in my plan. So I know that that is exactly what I was expecting. And I can also take a look at the resources that were impacted and see that only the firewall rule that I want to be there is there. It's also worth noting that all of this is done without making any changes to your code or your infrastructure. All of this is done in a completely separate branch that CD4PE creates. So no one is messing with your Git repo. No agents are running on your infrastructure unexpectedly. So coming back to my PR, I can merge with confidence. see everything is green, confirm merge. And then if I come back to CD4P, I'll see that it's kicked off each of these checks once again. Not every PR takes 2 minutes to merge, and sometimes there are other changes that get introduced into your main branch. Sometimes there's changes to your infrastructure. So I've configured this to run all of my checks again, and then if everything is green, to automatically deploy my Puppet code and run the agent to immediately start enforcing my changes. So everything looks green, and so my deployment is running. If I go in here, I can see a little bit of what it's doing. Looks like it's updated. It's running Puppet, and it's done. And my code is deployed to production. So using both Bolt and CD4PE has given me a lot of confidence in the changes I'm making and knowing exactly what's going on and how this is all impacting my infrastructure. And it's really helped tighten those feedback loops of not having to take a circuitous route to know what's going to happen. Everything can happen really quickly, and I can develop that much faster. Use Puppet.
So Bolt 1.0 and CD for PE 2.0, again, both available today. So now let's talk about the second set of challenges. We talked about accelerating and scale. Let's talk about transform. As we talk to infrastructure teams across the globe, we hear teams being asked to stand up a shared container infrastructure, as well as standardizing on the set of tools for application delivery. And while this enables us to all be able to deliver software faster, it does imply some change in the way that we think about the practices and tools in our organizations. A year ago, we introduced Puppet pipelines, and specifically pipelines for containers, which allows you to create a containerized application, create an image out of that that you can store in a container registry, and deploy that out to a Kubernetes cluster. And I'm really excited to share with you that in the latest release, version 3.3, we've now incorporated support for Helm charts. Helm has now become the de facto package management solution for Kubernetes. And so it's a natural extension to pipelines to be able to create a Helm chart image as part of that software delivery step. The Puppet Forge team, internally to Puppet, has actually gone through its own transformation, containerizing the Puppet Forge on Kubernetes and using pipelines for containers as part of their application development process. And to show you that in action with pipelines for containers 3.3, I'm going to invite Nick Lewis, one of our engineers, on stage to give you a demo.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Nick Lewis, and I'm actually a Bolt engineer, but because Lucy has already told you everything that you need to know about Bolt 1.0, woo! I'm instead going to talk about some of the work that my friends on the Puppet Forge team have been doing. As Matt mentioned, they've been going through a transformation from a node-centric application deployment to a cloud-native container-based deployment on Kubernetes. And I want to talk about some of the opportunities that has presented around code review in particular. So here I have a pull request against the Forge web application that just updates the homepage with a release announcement about PE 2019. So I can come in and look at the files that changed there. And I can see, they changed some headers on the web page, and there's some new text about PE 2019 and link to a blog post. But it would be really nice if I could see this actually running to make sure that, the text fits correctly and everything works properly. And especially with a more complicated change, you would really want to be able to click around and try it out and share it with the rest of the team. Traditionally, the way that this would work in a node-centric application is you would use probably one of a few static environments. I think they have a development, staging, and production environments, pretty standard. And the setting up environments like that is automated, but there's still some manual steps like making a branch, changing some code, and getting review and pull requests merged to get up a new environment. So really, you just in practice stick with development, staging, and production. And if you want to use one of those, you go into HipChat and say, hey, I'm going to be using staging right now. Nobody else test out any changes. And that, that's a lot of overhead, and it limits what you can do at once. The alternative is you have a developer pull it down onto their laptop in maybe like a Vagrant environment on VirtualBox and run it on some laptops. That's okay too, but it's really hard to share that with someone. I could try to bring them over to my desk to show them, but what if they don't work in the same office as I do, or they're at home, or I want to show them later? That's really difficult. And it means that people who aren't necessarily developers and don't have a development environment set up can't participate as easily in the process. That includes folks like product managers and UX designers and technical writers who all have valuable input, but they're sort of excluded from the process. So that works okay for a small team, especially one that's co-located, but it's not scalable as the team grows. And it's not really empowering. It doesn't help you work better. And it's not a very enjoyable way to work. So the team has been transitioning, as I was saying, to a cloud-native deployment using pipelines for containers and Helm. That's involved updating many parts of the application and how it's deployed, including how it's configured, how it's monitored, and importantly, how it's reviewed, changes are reviewed, and how it's deployed. So for deployment, they're using Helm, which is, as Matt said, the de facto package manager for Kubernetes these days. Basically, Helm lets you define what's called a chart that includes all of the Kubernetes resources, including containers, services, secrets, that are necessary to spin up the entire application stack and all of its infrastructure. So that means that you have a single artifact that you can branch and version and put through CI pipelines for your entire application. And so Pipelines for Containers has added support for Helm chart-based deployments in version 3.3. So the Forge team has been using that for part of their pull request review. So as we've been talking about this, Puppet Pipelines has been working on that pull request in the background. And we can see this is a simple pipeline made up of reusable standard components. So it will build a container based on that pull request we saw, homepage, Puppetize Live. We can link back to the branch and see what the code it's building is. After that's built, it pushes it to an internal container repository for staging. And then it deploys this Forge Web Helm chart. So that's actually, or it's updating the Helm chart and then deploying it down here. That's actually deploying a whole instance of the entire Forge application just based on this pull request. And that's happening automatically on commit or on pull request creation to the project. So I can look at this Helm chart deployment and see that it's finished deploying, did Forge Web onto the shared Kubernetes dev cluster. And it's got a couple of Kubernetes resources, a service, deployment, ingress. And importantly, I've got a URL here that is, you can see WebPR61, it says, which is a pull request specific instance of the Forge running that version of the code. And that's a URL that I can share with anyone on the team. It was created automatically, just took a few minutes after pull request creation. I could say, hey, I just filed this pull request. Can you take a look at it? Let me know what you think. There's no reserving a static environment and going through a manual process to spin it up. It's not just confined to my laptop. I can share that with anyone and get very fast feedback. All I have to do is visit that URL, and I can see my change running right here. So that's a great way to work. It dramatically speeds up the feedback cycles, and it lets you both hit the magic combination of improving speed as well as improving safety. And this has been a fantastic learning experience for that team, working with new technologies, the container-based deployment model, working with Kubernetes, working with Helm, and importantly, working with Pipelines for Containers and the Pipelines team on improvements to the Pipelines application that benefit not only the Puppet Forge team, but also all of you who are going to be using Pipelines for Containers right away, right? This is, of course, still a work in progress, but the goal is to have the production version of the Forge running in Kubernetes by the end of the year. The Helm chart support in Pipelines for Containers is available now in version 3.3. So go try that out. Thank you. That's Matt.
Thanks, Nick. By the way, Ryan mentioned earlier that he is the second longest tenured Puppet employee that's here. You just witnessed the longest tenured Puppet employee that's here, so give it up for Nick. So finally, we move on to our fourth challenge. How do we measure the impact of our DevOps transformation? And I'm super excited to share with you a brand new product from Puppet that we call Puppet Insights. Puppet Insights will launch in private beta in October, in this month. Puppet Insights pulls the data out of various sources like your version control systems, your ticketing systems, and your CI/CD solutions to be able to create a set of scores that give you visibility into your velocity, your quality, and the impact of your software delivery. From there, you have the ability to drill into those scores to understand where bottlenecks exist in your whole pipeline. And from that, you get a set of recommendations. And those recommendations actually come out of the State of DevOps report. So they're grounded in 7 years of experience that we've collected across this industry. This is one of those products that really speaks for itself. So I'd like to invite Ryan back on stage to give you a demo of Puppet Insights.
Hey everybody, nice to see you again. I am your human DevOps for the keynote today. So Puppet Insights, as Matt set up, this is really about measurement. And I'm not from the Reflect team who have built the Insights product, but I'm excited that Puppet's doing this. I started as a professional services engineer, and every single one of my trainings and deployments is helping people use Puppet, but then helping people change their practices, change their processes, change how people interact with each other, change how teams are organized. And Insights is a product from Puppet that helps to codify all the things that we've learned over the past decade and to help you take those learnings and implement them and measure how you're doing as you do that. So, as Matt teed up, we have a number of different scores here. Velocity score is how often are you committing? How often are you deploying? Those kinds of speed-based measures. Quality scores are about the software you're testing, the quality of whether or not defects are coming into your code, right? The quality of those test runs. And impact is something we're still working on that will help give you a sense of what is the business value of the changes you're making and how is the sort of different deltas and how long or the defect rate in your software impacting your business. So I'm going to give you a quick preview here, and I'm going to look through a couple other things. And for instance, we have a dashboard here that can give you a couple different things. I'll zoom in on deployment lead time. And this will give an organizational view of how long it takes for code to get from the branch to production. And as many of you know, lead time can be super critical. If you have a long lead time, that's value you haven't shipped to your customers. That's code your engineers are starting to forget about. And that's change sets that are becoming larger for your operations teams to absorb and deploy successfully into production. And if you find that your lead time, as in our example here, is increased, we're offering a number of suggestions for you to help improve your deployment lead time. And as Sandy mentioned earlier today, we're basing this on our State of DevOps report research. So immediately, once you use this product, you're getting real feedback on how you can improve your processes based on what we've learned in the past 10 years from helping all of you deploy and from the deep research we do as the State of DevOps report. And then these are just a sample that get you started. And as you use the product, the goal is to start making personalized recommendations that meet you where you are and help you improve your processes incrementally. So if I go back to the beginning of software delivery pipeline here, I can see that we again break down into a couple of different ways. You can go and look at your commit rate, you can look at the builds of your applications, and you can look at those deploys, and then go into, for each team, for each project, how each of those are performing along these vectors. And I'm going to go into a particular organization here just to show you a little bit of that drill down. I'm going to go into this pipelines for engineering team, or go into a particular team here, and then highlight for you the container engineering team, who've seen their average deployment lead time increase. And again, I can look at recommendations on how to improve that. We might use this within a retrospective during our sprint to say we've been tracking this over the last month. In this case, of course, the team is rapidly building the software that we just saw today in these demos. It makes sense. They know what kind of debt they've been accumulating, and they're building a plan to burn that down. Similarly, you can drill into the bottlenecks for average build time in this case and see that build times have gone up. And that might be something where maybe you've got a test suite that's taking too long, or your artifacts could use more efficiency in the processes you're using to get your application built and ready. Or it could be that you need to do something more dramatic, like in this team's example, they're going to start containerizing their build pipeline so that they can bring this number back down and reduce their overall lead time to delivery. So that's a quick look at Puppet Insights. Again, I'm not from the Insights team, but Alex, who heads that team, just did a talk in San Francisco, and I believe it's not already up. You'll find it soon on puppet.com, and I hope you go out and enjoy it. Thank you, and I'd like to bring back Matt.
Thanks, Brian. All right, Puppet Insights in private beta this month. So I hope you share in our excitement about all that's new at Puppet, whether it's Puppet Discovery, Puppet Enterprise, Puppet Pipelines, and now Puppet Insights. We've built these products to help solve the challenges that you all face, those 4 challenges of accelerating your time to automation, scaling, transforming, and measuring the impact of your DevOps journey. Well, I'm a product person, and I love to be able to share all these new product announcements with you. What's more important is that we're helping you solve the challenges that you face every day. We've had a really long-standing commitment to our community, so I really look forward to hearing from all of you over the coming weeks and months as you try out all that's new at Puppet. Thank you.